Georgian football is a story of contrasts. On one side, you have a national team that just qualified for their first major tournament in 2024 and is producing world-class talents like Khvicha Kvaratskhelia and Georgi Mamardashvili. On the other side, you have a domestic league that struggles to draw crowds, gets little attention, and is one of the weakest leagues in Europe, currently sitting in the 52nd place of UEFA rankings, only ahead of Wales, Gibraltar, and San Marino. To understand Georgian football today, we must look back to the Soviet era, when Georgia was a true football powerhouse. The pride of the nation was Dynamo Tbilisi, one of the strongest sides in the Soviet top league, as they won it twice, in 1964 and 1978. Their second triumph allowed them to play in the 79-80 edition of European Cup, where they met a legendary Liverpool side with the likes of Kenny Dalglish, Alan Hansen or Graham Souness. The first leg at Anfield would have had Liverpool fans raising their eyebrows as the game ended only with a 2-1 win for the English champions. In the second leg, this time in Tbilisi, a record attendance of 110,000 people crowded into the Lenin Dynamo Stadium, the third largest stadium in the Soviet Union at the time, with an official capacity of 74,000. They came to help their team pull off one of the biggest upsets of the 1970s, as Dynamo beat Liverpool 3-0 on the day and 4-2 on aggregate. However, sadly for them, their run would end in the next round as they lost to Hamburg 6-3 on aggregate in the round of 16. The following season saw Liverpool go on to reclaim the European Cup, but the Georgian club would also go on to strike European gold. In the 1981 UEFA Cup Winners' Cup final, Dynamo Tbilisi beat East Germany's Karl Zeiss Jena 2-1, becoming the second Soviet team to win the trophy. Besides Russia and Ukraine, only Georgia was ever able to have a second representative survive in the top league in addition to their capital city club, with Torpedo Kutaisi playing over 10 seasons in the top flight. Georgia has also contributed to the successes of Soviet Union, such as the 4th place at the 1966 World Cup or the triumph in the 1960 Euros, where a Georgian striker, Slava Metreveli, made it to the team of the tournament. The remainder of 1980s saw Dynamo struggle to qualify for European competitions as well as win anything at home in either the Soviet Top League or the Soviet Cup. 1989 season was their last season in the Soviet football pyramid as they departed to compete in the Georgian football system. Dynamo were by far the biggest club in Georgia, and for the first 10 seasons they won every single league title and also the Georgian Cup 6 years in a row. But without the financial backing of the Soviet sports system, Georgian football soon ran into major problems. The country also endured years of turmoil in the early 1990s, and football was well down most people's list of priorities. Facilities were allowed to run down or in some cases disappear altogether. The president of Georgian Footballers Association said this: "Football is always developing, the tactics, the training, the medicine, everything, but we had no money and so we could not keep up. We lost 10 to 15 years or more and there is still no real plan as to how things can be changed." Despite continued success in national cups and championships, the once powerful Dynamo Tbilisi had no success in Europe as the key players would quickly leave to better European leagues. Players like Levian Kobiashvili, Giorgi Kinkladze or Kaka Kaladze would leave the league in their early 20s and they would spend their prime years playing in top European leagues rather than in Georgia. Not much has changed in the 21st century. Their initial dominance has faded away, but Dynamo Tbilisi still have been the best side in Georgia, challenging for the title nearly every season and adding another 9 championships to their trophy cabinet. After beating Wisła Kraków on away goals in the UEFA Cup playoff round in 2004, Dynamo Tbilisi became the first Georgian team to qualify for the group stages of a European competition. Despite this being the only time a Georgian team ever qualified, their performance wasn't very memorable as they lost every single game in the group stage and finished last, while conceding 13 goals in 4 games. Georgian teams had a good period in the early to mid 2010s, good in quotation marks, because they haven't qualified for any competitions, but they came close, reaching the playoff round on few occasions. Dila FC reached the playoff round in back-to-back seasons, but they were not strong enough to beat firstly Maritimo FC and then Rapid Wien 1 year later. Dila FC did follow up on their success, as in 2015 they won their first and only league title under the management of a 25-year-old coach, Ucha Sosiashvili. These These performances saw Georgian League climb up to the 31st place in the UEFA ranking in 2012, but the level of Dila FC and the whole Georgian League since then has declined. Today it is considered one of the weakest leagues in Europe. And even with the addition of Conference League, which has allowed teams from North Macedonia, Wales or Gibraltar to play in European competitions, a Georgian team is still yet to qualify for this competition. Even more embarrassingly, Georgian teams never even reached the playoff round of Conference League, something that a team from even San Marino has managed to achieve. Besides Dinamo Tbilisi, there have been few bright spots recently, one of them being FC Iberia 1999, formerly known as FC Saburtalo. Founded in 1999, they reached the first division in 2015 and won 2 titles since then, in 2018 and 2024. The club focuses on youth development and has produced several players who were sold to better European leagues and became Georgian internationals. The other team is Dinamo Batumi, a club from the Black Sea coast. They have emerged as a challenger to Dinamo Tbilisi after changing owners in 2019 and building a new stadium which attracted strong local support. That support has helped them to win the league in 2021 and 2023, although they have been struggling lately in the league due to financial problems. However, average attendance per match in the Georgian League is low, at about 1,400 spectators per game, according to the UEFA report in 2025. That's also a -18 decrease from the previous season, third biggest decrease in Europe. Poor attendance, of course, in return weakens matchday revenue, atmosphere and sponsorship potential. As previously mentioned, players who show potential often move abroad, even earlier than in the past, as players like Gagnidze, Goglicidze or Kvaratskhelia left the league as teenagers. Kvaratskhelia did come back for a few months, but that was due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Georgian teams don't have a lot of money and spend very little on transfers. Since 2022, Georgian League spent around 650,000 euros. Meanwhile, their neighbors, Armenia, who has a similar population and similar GDP and probably isn't as much of a footballing nation as Georgia, has managed to spend 1,350,000 euros just in 2025. Due to the low prestige of the league and poor performances in Europe, Georgian teams can't generate as much money from sales as they would want. In the 21st century, after Kvaratskhelia and Mamardashvili, the third most expensive sale doesn't even surpass 2 million euros. Money is definitely a problem in Georgian football, as monthly salaries range from 1,000 to 3,000 euros per month, with the majority of clubs relying on local authorities to keep them afloat. And this relying on authorities started in 2016, when the government implemented a football fund. The federation also cut down the number of teams from 14 to 10 and changed the format of the league to March to December, aligning with many Nordic and Eastern European nations. According to Georgian Footy, an account on X that I spoke with, they were desperate to start a new season, the one in 2017, as quick as possible, for the government money to be issued by the state fund so they can invest some of it into football, therefore turning majority of clubs loyal to the government and federation, as well as pocketing some money for themselves. This funding gave the opportunity for many clubs to basically exist on minimum finances and survive year by year, not really prompting their owners to work hard. Georgian Footy also added, the local owners and sporting directors are generally uneducated and incompetent to run such organizations. They tend to hire the exact same coaches and players from club to club, despite lack of success. It can also be argued that the switch to March-December format was a bad idea, as since then the Georgian League went from 36th place in the UEFA ranking to 52nd. The president of the Georgian FA stated that it's actually beneficial because the clubs would hit form right when the qualifiers would begin. In reality, there is a 2-month break of the league season in June and July. So although in theory it sounds like teams could be in match rhythm for the qualifiers, they rest for a whole month before the qualifiers kick off. And yet, despite the struggles at club level, the Georgian national team is doing well. In the past, Georgia had a few big-name players and had decent qualifying campaigns for 1996 Euros as well as the 2002 World Cup, finishing in 3rd place in both, but still a few points off qualification. Sadly, things only got worse after that, as since then Georgia was mostly an outsider in qualification groups, never finishing above 4th place. Once the likes of Kaladze and Arveladze retired, the national team in the 2010s lacked any top-class players, and they had some qualifying campaigns in which they failed failed to achieve a single win, for example in 2010 and 2018. Around mid-2010s, Georgia, with UEFA's assistance, made significant success in improving its infrastructure and establishing numerous training centers nationwide, thereby providing optimal conditions for the growth of young footballers. In 2013, Cristiano Ronaldo visited the opening of the Dinamo Tbilisi Academy. Many kids who were there on that day would go on to play against Ronaldo at the 2024 Euros. The progression is also noticeable in the growth of registered footballers. From 2015 to 2021, their numbers more than doubled, rising from 14,000 to 37,000. Georgia also revamped outdated stadiums in preparation for Under-19 Euros in 2017 and Under-21 Euros in 2023, which they hosted. Those changes and the addition of UEFA Nations League definitely helped the nation. The new competition gave smaller countries a realistic path to a major tournament. In 2022, Georgia got to play in a playoff tournament for a place at the Euros, thanks to winning their Nations League group. They beat Belarus in the semi-final before being edged out 1-0 in the final by North Macedonia. But they didn't give up. In the 2022-23 Nations League, Georgia topped their group in League C, going unbeaten with 5 wins and 1 draw, which again allowed them to play in the playoff tournament. This time Georgia beat Luxembourg 2-0 in the semi-final and then defeated Greece in Tbilisi, with home support driving them to their first ever major tournament. But before we talk about Euro 2024, there was another tournament in which Georgia played a year before. Under-21 Euros played in Romania and Georgia. Despite being the hosts, Georgia were huge underdogs, especially after they found out who their opponents were. Portugal, with the likes of João Neves, Pedro Neto and Conceição. Netherlands, with the likes of Van de Ven, Gravenberch or Xerxes. And Belgium, with the likes of Openda, De Ketelaere or De Kuyper. Against all the odds, tens of thousands of fans in Tbilisi saw Georgia go unbeaten in the group, starting off with a win against Portugal in the opening game, followed by 2 draws with Belgium and Netherlands. In the knockout stage, they sadly lost to another underdog, Israel, but this tournament had Georgian fans believing that they can cause more upsets in 2024. Also, 10 players from their starting 11 would be Georgian internationals or players that would go on to represent Georgia after the tournament. In 2024, Georgia's senior team impressed despite losing their opener to Turkey, creating plenty of chances and showing they can compete with strong sides. A great performance from Mamardashvili earned Georgia a draw with Czechia, keeping their hopes alive if they could beat Portugal in the final game. And Georgia did just that, winning 2-0 against Portuguese side that were favoured even despite their rotation, with goals from their 2-star players. Georgia's run ended in the next round. Despite an early lead, Spain hit back, won 4-1 and went on to lift the trophy. Nevertheless, it was a huge success for Georgia that they can definitely build on. Apart from Khvicha, who will most likely retire soon, the core of the team is players that are in their 20s. Kvaratskhelia and Mamardashvili are of course 2 world-class players, but besides them, Georgia also has many players playing in the top leagues, such as Davidashvili, Michał Tadze, the joint Euro top goalscorer who moved to Villarreal for 30 million euros in the summer of 2025. He wasn't the only one making a move. Saba Goglicidze moved to Udinese and Giorgi Kocherashvili transferred to Sporting. Of course, I can't forget about Oter Kitejshvili, who has been one of the best players in Austria and led Sturm Graz to 2 Bundesliga titles.